for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is actor-director Gavin Hood and Mark Reilly with his puppet Dusty, his puppet Dusty. Actor, director, writer Gavin Hood was born and raised in South Africa. He earned degrees in economics and the law before going to study film at UCLA. It seems you were right to go into the film business because you've done such great things.
Well, everything my parents didn't want me to do.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, it's this funny thing. My parents were actors when they were younger, and so I grew up around actors and around the theatre. And of course, when I got into high school, having done a lot of plays, and I decided I wanted to study drama and film, there was this kind of horror of horrors that perhaps you ought to do something that might be more stable. So I I adore my parents, and I think it was just cautious advice because we all know how unstable this industry can be. And so I dutifully went along and I did an economics undergrad degree and then a law degree, but the whole way through I was doing a lot of stills photography. I loved stills photography, and I was also doing a lot of theatre.
Where was that?
This was in Johannesburg at the University of the Witwatersrand.
So how did you end up coming to UCLA
So what happened was, doing theatre as a law student, this odd law student doing theatre with the drama students, I got an agent. And from getting an agent, I've confessed that I practiced law for only 4.5 months. So this was, I think my law career was very short.
Did you actually?
So I graduated and I practiced, 4.5 months. But the irony was that during that time, I came across a case which formed the subject of my first feature film, which was A Reasonable Man. And the case, which was based on a true story, which just fascinated me because it seemed to me that it embodied this dilemma of who in a multicultural society is a reasonable person. And in the law, you have this notion that there is some sort of standard of reasonable behavior and standard of reasonableness. Even here in the United States, if you're charged with manslaughter, then you are guilty if you've killed in a situation where, quote, a reasonable person would not have done so. And that kind of raises the question, well, who is a reasonable person? And I think what's interesting with the film is that we had it screened recently in Riverside at the festival there, and the audience seems to be more interested in this film now, post 9/11, and I say that very cautiously, Joan, for obvious reasons. But I think this notion of can one's beliefs justify certain actions is more something that Americans are thinking about now.
Well, when I saw the film, you acted in it, you wrote it, you produced it, and you directed it. And obviously it was an independent film.
Right.
And it was made, I assume, on a low budget.
Yeah, it was made for just over $1 million, yeah.
So it was, has all the qualities of an independent film, and it's just been winning awards everywhere it's shown.
Yeah, it kind of surprised us, and that was really gratifying because I think, originally it was really made as a TV movie for Mnet in South Africa, the pay channel in South Africa. And then it got picked up by festivals, and Variety saw it in Kalavivari, and I was named in 2000 as one of 10 directors to watch by Variety, which was very exciting. And suddenly it was going to Edinburgh and Chicago and Montreal. And it's really, well, I should tell you briefly what the story is. It's essentially based on a story about a young herd boy from rural Zululand who is charged with the murder of a 1-year-old baby. And he
didn't speak any English,
and he didn't speak any English, and he is then brought to trial for the murder of this baby, and his defense is that he genuinely believed he was killing Utigoloshe, which is an evil spirit. And so the judge, played by Nigel Hawthorne, who you may remember from The Madness of King George.
How'd you get Nigel Hawthorne?
Nigel is, in fact, originally from South Africa.
I mean, he is an Academy Award nominee. Yep. He's like the tops in his field, and here he is in this small independent film.
No, we were very, very lucky to get Nigel.
Did you know him?
Well, my wife, God bless her, had acted with Nigel in a film directed by Arthur Penn called Inside.
Oh, and she is in the movie as well.
And she's in my movie too.
What's her name?
Janine Esser. And Janine had worked with Nigel, and we got to know Nigel, and he knew about this story. And one day he said, "So what's the story about?" And I thought, do I even dare ask him? You know, and I and he looked at the script, and he read the script. He said, "Well, if you'd like some help." I said, "You're kidding me. Would you play the judge? Because the judge is, you know."
Did you have it in your mind?
Well, I would lie if I said it didn't have it in my mind. Of course I had it in my mind. But I didn't think he would, and it was one of those catch-22s. You don't want to be too pushy because you don't want to seem like you're pushing.
Right.
But at the same time, of course you're hoping for it. And I obviously he knew that, and he thought, I think it, you know, it was kind of embarrassing the way I was sort of saying, "Would you read it?" But you know.
But it was. But he's wonderful because he brings such stature to the movie.
He really
and
does.
you, of course, acting as the lawyer at that point, and you've gone to law school, and you know all of your cases. You know how to stand in front of a judge and talk.
Right, and it's a really nice dynamic, I think, between the two of us, because Nigel is almost a mentor figure to this young lawyer. And Nigel's problem, he says this really strange thing at one point when he says, "Look, if I accept your defense of this boy's belief, where do I draw the line? I will have people walking into this courtroom claiming they were inspired by God Almighty, Krishna, or Allah to commit what we used to call murder." And I mean, when this line was said, this film was made pre-9/11, when this line was spoken, and the audience saw it 2 weeks ago, there was this kind of hush, and then the discussion afterwards, the whole discussion about whose beliefs are valid, whose are not, becomes very powerful, I think.
And what religion?
Exactly.
It comes before the other religion.
Exactly. And is religious belief ever admissible in a court of law? And you know, there's no real answer to this. It's just an incredibly wonderful debate. But
this hasn't been distributed in the U.S.
Not in America. It's in Europe and South Africa and Australia, yes.
Going back, because showing all the awards you've won on, all the things, your first screenplay at UCLA as a student coming out of there won 13 awards.
Well, that was my first short film.
Your first short film, and you had
Storekeeper,
this great impressive jury picking your.
Yeah, the screenplay won a Diane Thomas Screenwriting Award, which had Spielberg and Michael Douglas and Kathleen Kennedy on.
Did you have an exchange with them?
No, I think it's again they were the judges, and when we went to the awards ceremony, there was a representative from Amblin Entertainment there, and it was fantastic. But after all, it was a young screenwriters competition, and I think and my film, it was a strange thing because I had tons of meetings all around town, but of course it's a story set in Africa about a young herd boy who kills a baby.
You already had your film.
This was the script. This was the very script.
Oh, it was.
This was the script for A Reasonable Man. Exactly.
Oh, how great!
But people would say things like, "Well, don't you have an action adventure? Don't you have a thriller?" I was like, "Oh dear!" And then I was on a student visa, so I couldn't stay. I went back to South Africa, and that's when I made the film in South Africa. Yeah.
Oh, but you made a 22-minute short that also won lots of awards.
Yes, that was the
you were on your step. You were stepping up as a filmmaker,
fighting to get something made any way you can, Joan. Because it's the thing with the film business, and it's getting a little easier now. The thing with the film business is it's so expensive to make film. Nowadays with digital cameras and so on, it's easier for young filmmakers to make films than it was even 5 years ago, even 10 years ago.
Be more intelligent or more artistic, or
you mean today? Or
yes, so what you're talking about now.
I think here's the irony of the situation. More people are going to be able to make films. That doesn't necessarily we're going to see better films, because fundamentally what you still need is a good story. And storytelling is really the key. I mean, can you write a great script? And then can you realize it well on film?
That's why this was so interesting, because there were so many aspects to it that grabbed you and held you.
Thank you.
The other thing that you did, because I don't want to lose time.
Oh, right. Okay, yes.
You've gotten so many other awards. In Desert and Wilderness is totally different from this. It's
that's a kids movie. Yeah.
But it was made in Poland?
It's a Polish film,
oh, okay.
But it was made in Africa. But it's based on a book by Henryk Sienkiewicz, who's better known for Quo Vadis. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and his biggest work is Quo Vadis. He also wrote this book.
How do you say his name? I couldn't say
Henryk
it.
Sienkiewicz. And so he's probably Poland's greatest writer. And he wrote this one book for kids, And it's set in Africa, and they came to Africa to shoot it.
And that's how they found you?
And that's how they found me.
But it was one of the, in 2001 or 2002, one of the highest grossing films?
Yeah, in the history of Poland, it's the third highest grossing film ever, including Hollywood movies. So we were lucky with that.
That was
went well.
really something.
Yeah.
So you can make any kind of film. Is that it, basically?
I don't know. It's, you know, it's so hard to get to make a film because of the money that you need to raise, Joan, that when this film was presented to me, it was, why me?
And why
wait a
was
minute.
it you?
Well, because they had a Polish director, and he had panicked when he got to Africa with the there's a lot of elephants and animals, and I think the scale of it was just a bit beyond him.
You mean really physically
Really
like that?
physically panicked, and he got with these horses and elephants that needed to be in a convoy, and he wanted the elephant to be behind the horses, and the horses bolted and ran into the bush, and you know, so they panicked, and one of the producers knew my previous work, and I got this kind of weird call, said, could you come on and take over this picture? And it's this wonderful adventure, but it's in Polish, but don't let that worry you. I thought, are you kidding me?
Was it all in Polish?
Well,
the actors?
the actors were in Polish, but the crew was all South African.
Oh, so you could get along with the
I
crew.
could work, and the Polish actors spoke English. So it was a very bizarre situation, but I'm proud to say it won the Best of the Fest, the Children's Film Festival in Chicago
know.
2 months ago, and it's done well on the circuit in Poland. And so
It's just, it like took over.
yeah, no, it did better than any of us had hoped, so that was great. That was
And
nice.
you're still writing,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
And you're writing with someone? Do you write alone? How do you do
I
this?
generally write alone. I've been working on a film at the moment with my wife on the story side, and Janine is an actress and also has an honours degree in drama and film, so she's an incredible person to bounce ideas with. So she's essentially my editor with a big stick, you know, and the red pen. What is this? You know, overwrite.
But does she write with you or just
No,
edit?
she generally, I write
Edits.
and, you know, sit for days, and then eventually I'm brave enough to say, would you have a look at this, honey, and I'll wait for the, but she's a fabulous editor, and I'm very lucky to have somebody to do that. I think it's important to have somebody to bounce your ideas off.
Do you write all the time? How do you do it?
You know, it's an interesting question, Joan. I pretty much do, because sometimes, like this Polish film came out of the blue, but generally I'd written for television before I made my first feature. If you're not generating work yourself and you're always just waiting for the phone to ring, it's terrible. So rather than waiting for the phone, it's better to be actively doing something.
And if you're actively doing that and she's edited it, then do you send it out? Do you have an
Yes,
agent or somebody?
Yes, then you use your agent and agents and managers to send it out to the next step. And raising the money always takes 10 times longer than writing the script. I mean, that's the worst part.
But if you're doing the film yourself, then you have to do that.
Yeah, if you're doing, and on A Reasonable Man, with my partner Paul, we raised the money on that film. On In Desert and Wilderness, I wasn't producing it all, the money had come from somewhere else. And so I've also been hired as a writer to do adaptations of books for people. I've had 3 films made, and I've probably written 7 others that for one reason or another they get close to being financed, or they don't, or they're still out there. You know, in Hollywood even, the studios will develop 100 films each a year probably, of which they make 10. So there's a lot of things that you develop
you're
and work on,
writing
and you
and
keep
working?
pushing product out, and
And you don't know.
you try your best and see what happens.
So there we are.
There we
did
are.
our best. We're happy you were with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Gavin Hood.
much. Thank you.
And thanks for watching. Don't go away, because we're going to be back with Mark Reilly and his puppet, Dusty. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with Mark Reilly. Mark was born and raised in Buffalo, New York, and moved to Los Angeles when he was 20. Up until that time, you were wrapped up in puppets and dolls, and with all of your sisters in the family. How did you decide that this is what you wanted to do?
Actually, the puppet thing was kind of a hobby. And I always, as a kid, I made puppets. Because I was the only boy, I sort of escaped into my own world. All of my sisters are younger than me. I was the oldest. I am the oldest. So it as I say, it was just a hobby. I actually ended up in the funeral business. I was in the funeral business for 30 years.
No, not that long.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Because first of all, I was
Darling,
thinking,
I'll be 51 in April.
But first of all, I didn't know you had been in there. I was reading your bio and I was thinking, well, he was influenced by Edgar Bergen and Paul Winchell and Sherry Lewis,
Yeah.
and he came out to Los Angeles looking for something to do, and you went to mortuary school.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, what was he doing at mortuary school?
I actually became a licensed embalmer. And I had my own business as I was what we call in the business a trade embalmer. I freelanced, doing going from mortuary to mortuary who didn't have their.
Is that how you do it?
Yeah, yeah. I had my own accounts and went from mortuary to mortuary who didn't have their own staff embalmers or either did the after-hour work.
Would that be more difficult, because at least when you're working in one place, you know what kind of clientele comes in?
No, actually, I rather liked it because I didn't work a 9-to-5 job or an 8-to-5 job. Yeah, it was a little difficult because I lived on a beeper, and I had to go work sometimes when I didn't want to work, and then there were periods where I didn't have any work for a few days. But
do you think that was because of your artistic background? I mean, that's kind of there's an artistic bent to that.
yeah, no, I actually came to LA originally to seek. I wanted to be a film editor.
Oh,
is what I
see.
wanted to do.
I see.
But I had a friend who was a film editor and said, "Forget it. You know, it's very."
Don't do it?
Yeah. Well, unless you know somebody in the business, you're not going to get in. So I thought, okay. So I ended up going into the funeral business, which was my second love. And it was during that period of time that I met Waylon Flowers.
So that was your big break then?
Yeah.
Waylon Flowers, who
Yeah.
was a puppeteer, let's call him, with the show, with Madam. And how did you actually get into Waylon to see him and do all that?
I had gone, there used to be a club in West Hollywood called, well, it was Studio One, but they had the back lot.
Backlot, right.
Back lot. And I was in there when I was in my early 20s, mid-20s. And I hear this laugh coming from behind this curtain that they would draw across the theater doorway. And it was, come to find out later, it was Madam. And when I realized who it was, I went to see the show.
Madam was his puppet.
Right. Night after night after night, I went to see this show. And I thought, I got to meet this guy. And he's doing something that I always wanted to do.
Isn't that
a
weird?
risque puppet show.
Yeah, risque.
Yeah, it was risque. It was an adult
Right.
puppet show. And
Exactly.
I thought, I got to do this. So what I did is, I found out that his manager at the time was Don Williams, who was Andy Williams' brother.
Oh, he was a manager.
Yeah. And I got a hold of Don, and I told him I wanted to meet with him. I said, okay, I'll set it up for you. Anyway, I made sculpted this head out of paper mache of Madam.
You did, yourself, before you ever got to him.
Yeah, a bust. And I thought, okay, this is my hook. I'll present this to him as a fan. So I got a hold of Don, and I said, I've got this thing I want to give to him. He said, okay, fine. So he set up a meeting for me. I went to Waylon's house one night and gave him this bust, and we got into talking and told him how much I enjoyed the show, whatever. And I said, I want to work for you.
And Waylon was such a lovely person.
He was,
wasn't
yeah, he was very gracious.
Easygoing and very nice. And you're telling him, I want to work for you.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of, yeah, okay, fine. Do you know how many people he met over the years who wanted to work for him?
I'm sure.
So I...
and how many were dependable?
Yeah, exactly. And I literally bugged the crap out of him. I would take him to breakfast, I'd take him to dinner, I'd call him, I'd chat, don't forget me, it's one thing I'm good at, it's nudging people.
And you were working, still working.
Oh yeah,
in the
I was still in
mortuary.
the funeral business. So, and it eventually paid off. He was doing a show at the Roxy on Sunset Boulevard and said, I need someone to redo these puppets for me, do you want to work? I said, yes, and the rest is history.
Because you knew how to do the work.
Well, I was good with creating things, doing things with my hands. His type of characters, I had to pump him for information. He was not good. He was not forthcoming at giving information on how to do things.
Could he make his own?
Yeah,
puppets?
he could, and he did.
He did. That's what I wondered. Do you always make your own? Is that what a puppeteer does?
Generally, yeah. Yeah,
Because-
I don't know of any puppeteers who farm out there.
And why do you think that is?
I don't know. But have you ever looked, I don't know. Now, mine don't, and I know mine don't. But have you ever looked, a lot of puppeteers, their puppets look like them. They have very
Please.
similar.
I was going to say, she has your chin.
I do.
Yes, you
That's
do.
an insult. I do not have his chin.
We're
We're not even related.
You had a chin implant.
A chin implant. Yes, and I've had a boob implant too.
Ooh, wow.
Yes. Oh, actually, mine come with the dress.
Do you really dust floors? Oops.
No, that's just my name.
Ooh, you don't dust floors.
I didn't hurt you with those. No, I had to take my sunglasses off.
So
No,
you
that's my drag stage name, Dusty Floors. And like Regina Upright and Tiffany Lamp, mine's Dusty Floors. I'm
So-
really a man, darling.
So Dusty, I'm
Yes.
going to go back to Mark.
Okay.
Mark, do you write all of your own material?
I write a lot of my own material. I get it from other people. I steal like everybody else
Yeah.
does. But when I steal something, I always work it so it works to me. If I take something I've heard from somebody else, I thought, oh, that might work in a certain spot, I'll redo it so it fits. I mean, with the internet these days, Joan, there is
right.
nothing
That's
out there
safe,
that
right.
hasn't already been written.
Right. You talked about helping Waylon maintain his puppets, and you
Yeah.
have several puppets probably that you maintain. What is maintaining? I want to put her glasses right
Well-
there. What's maintaining?
Don't you dare. I have to. Paint has to be touched up occasionally. The hands tend to get soiled from use and they have to be replaced. The costumes start to get a little tattered looking, so I have to
So
do
that's
new
what
ones.
you would.
Yeah. But I'm low maintenance.
But how often do you work?
As often as I can, not as much as I would like to.
You're working at the Gardenia.
Yes, I will be at the Gardenia this
And you-
next month in April.
And you work where else? What other kind of venues?
I've done New York, I've done Chicago. God, I've played clubs all over the place.
How would you, when you say you build or you make, I was talking about making a puppet, you called it building it. So how does it work?
I'm a video editor, you build.
How does it work?
These characters are actually made out of celastic, which is a fabric. It's a, what I want to say, flannel. It's a flannel, is what it is. It's a cotton flannel fabric that's been highly saturated with cellulose, very heavy cellulose glue.
Really?
So it's almost like cardboard when it's dry.
Do you mold them?
Yeah, what you do is you make you sculpt the face out of a non-hardening clay, make a cast of it.
Oh, you do?
And then take this elastic and you tear into little strips and lay it within the mold and smooth it out. And so when you take it out of the mold, it has a different property than when it did previously because it's a little stiffer and it's thinner, but it's very lightweight and it holds its shape. It's like a fabric paper mache.
That's very interesting. And then how do you make it work? Because you have movable parts, right?
Well, the head is made separate from the chin, and the body is a fabric body that I had actually, Waylon had actually designed it, but I improved upon the style. And it's all put together in one piece. It's sewn together and then attached to the head where it has to be attached so that we move properly, darling.
But you call this a hand puppet, I guess. What kind of puppet do you call this?
It's a hand and rod.
Hand and rod.
Hand and rod, yeah.
Does she ever sit alone, or do you always have to have your hand there with her?
No, his hand is somewhere I don't want to say on television, so yes, I'm always with him.
Did you study puppetry, Mark?
No.
You didn't study it at all?
No, never studied
Is
puppetry.
there any way to study puppetry?
I suppose you could. From a kid, I always played with puppets. The hand and rod thing, I would sit for hours. Even when I worked for Waylon, I would just watch him manipulate these rods.
And when you were a little boy with your sisters around, did you learn how to sew at that time from them?
No, we used socks. You made sock puppets.
Oh, is that what it
sewing
was?
a couple buttons here and there. No big deal.
Oh, so it wasn't any kind of thing like that.
No, actually, I used to make marionettes. That was my gig.
And how were those made?
Some I made out of wood, some I made out of plastic, some I took some of my sister's old dolls and I cut the parts apart and hinged them and made little.
Is that how you would have to do? Hinge them and
yeah.
then put strings on?
Yeah, I was very innovative. My father hated it. I was playing with my dolls.
Yeah, but you're the one who made something. But
Yeah.
you really did make something out
I'm
of it.
happy.
What about in Europe? I think marionettes and puppetry is much more accepted.
It's not so much more. It's not that it's so much more accepted. In this country, when people say puppet show, they think little kids.
Exactly.
In Europe, when you say puppet show, puppets in Europe are more geared toward adult audiences. And
Well, especially the Punch and Judy things. Anyway,
yeah,
were very far advanced.
They were very dark. Punch and Judy's very dark if you watch their shows.
And I've been to museums in Europe where they have set up a marionette show or a puppet show that goes along with the exhibit that's on.
Yeah.
And it's interesting the way they use the puppetry.
Yeah.
So it seems to me you would have a bigger
I think so too.
following in Europe.
I think in England, Australia, New
Australia,
Zealand,
yeah.
Ireland, Scotland, I think I'd have a very good following over there. Yeah, I think I'd do very well over in the UK.
When you,
I want to be on So Graham Norton. I think he'd love me.
I love your hair because I have streaks in my hair.
Don't
the
you like
same.
this? Yes, this
Yeah.
is my Dame Edna look.
You see my streaks too.
I'm the
I've
Dame
always
Edna
done
of puppetry.
Have you ever done a sitcom?
No, but I worked on Madam's Place.
You worked.
Oh,
she
yes.
was in what? What was she in? A lot of TV shows.
Yeah, Wayland did Hollywood Squares. He did Solid Gold. He did guest appearances on other game shows, and we also did Madam's Place, which was his show.
And what about movies?
The only movie he ever did was Norman Is That You?
But what about you? Can you do movies? Can you do?
I can do all of
write
that
a
stuff.
Sitcom?
I've just never been asked yet.
But have you written something where you can?
No, I'm not much of a writer when it comes to that.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not really my forte.
Do you separate your identity from
Oh, absolutely.
Dusty's?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Are you still working in the embalming business?
Actually, I have a friend who has a mortuary up in La Crescenta, and I am his embalmer. But he does mostly cremations. I do very little work anymore.
Oh, that's an interesting point for
yeah.
your business.
I
Do you
actually
help with that? Or no, you don't need to be in that.
No, I actually have a small post-production company, so I'm a video editor,
Oh,
and
you
that's
do?
how I make my living now. I have several clients I do work for.
But that's interesting. That could start putting embalmers out of business, in a way. Cremation.
Oh well, I think it has.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean he just does a lot of
What
cremations.
does she think about it?
Oh, I don't give a crap what he makes. What he does, I give him all my money anyway.
And where do you want to go when he gets rid of you? When you finish your
I'm going to go to
Wife.
the old drag queen's home.
oh, is that what you're going to do?
Yes, sit out with the girls and just sip tea and make bodily noises.
Ooh.
I don't know. Maybe they'll just shoot me, put me out the pasture.
Do you have a boyfriend?
No. Yes, I do have a boyfriend, actually. You should see him. He's absolutely gorgeous. Tall, dark, handsome, 19.
Oh, much younger than you.
No, that's his IQ, darling. Oh, yes.
Do you love to be on stage?
I love to be. I am never happier than when I'm on stage.
Well, I have to say goodbye to you now.
Oh, well, it's been an absolute delight, I must say.
And I'm so happy you were with us,
Thank
Dusty.
you. You are going to come see my show, aren't you?
Of course, I
Oh,
wouldn't
good.
miss it. And Mark, thank you so much
My
for being
pleasure.
a guest.
My pleasure.
And my guests on TV, thank you for watching. And keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 917. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles. Bye, Dusty.